Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this, our 5th season, we are looking at Joe Johnston's 2011 film, Captain America: The First Avenger. I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Reel Film Podcast.
I'm Pete Wright, and today a lesson on password security.
Today we are talking about Minute 32, which begins with a brief stop in an antique shop and ends with everyone stopping what they're doing as Steve gets his first look at the Rebirth Lab. Joining us on the show again, it's Matthew Costello, professor of political science at St. Xavier University in Chicago and author of Secret Identity Crisis, Comic Books, and the Unmasking of Cold War America. Welcome back, Matthew.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Antique shops.
Antique shops and rebirth labs.
It's a minute full of all sorts of fun stuff.
I grew up in a little tiny town called Hollowell, Maine, on the banks of the Kennebec River. And downtown was nothing but antique shops. And I'm wondering, what's underneath those stores?
Yeah.
What was underneath it?
Sprawling.
Let's talk a little bit about the way that this is set up in the comic books to start. Did you go back and read all the Captain America comics? Were you reading Captain America when you were reading comics?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I don't think I've read all the Golden Age ones, but I've read a bunch of them, particularly through like the first 40 or so.
I find it very interesting that the first Captain America comic really kind of starts in the lab. And we kind of just we're pretty much jumping right in as these people arrive at this antique shop. It's a curio shop in the comics, but they have pretty much this exact setup. And so anyone who is familiar with the comics probably recognized the way that this is set up. How does this work for the two of you?
I actually thought it works really well. In the comic, of course, the old lady is right, the young spy in a mask. I really don't think there's any way they could have had that work without looking cheesy. And we needed to have the Peggy set up there as well. The comic book didn't give us any backstory on Steve, right? We don't really get any backstory on Steve in Brooklyn until the 1980s in a lot of ways. And so we need that. I mean, that's what gives us that context that tells us who he is, that pairs him with Peggy, that twins him with the Red Skull, that gives us that whole message the film is supposed to have about, right, humble democracy defeating the hubris of authoritarianism, right? And so it works very, very well. I think it works really well.
I think it does too. I don't think they could have started this movie like they did the comic and actually have it mean anything to us. And I love the. Before we started, Matthew called this the Get Smart Minute. I love the mechanics of getting into the secret lab. And I love and sort of resent them because, now one of my great dreams is to have a secret door behind the library. And I did a little research on this, and it turns out you can actually get, there are companies that now mass market secret doors that you can install in your house. Once they're manufacturing these on a line, it kind of takes all the spark out of it. Why do I want that? Everybody can have it. It's not special anymore. So I like the history of this because it still feels special at this point. It doesn't feel mass market. The secret's well kept. And
the move from the antique shop into the lab, right? That goes through these circuitous several doors you've got to pass through, which is what makes it look like a Get Smart moment. But what you're moving from is the past to the future, right? Antiques are the past, and the lab is this futuristic vision from the 1940s. And so you go down into this labyrinth. I mean, it's almost like Joseph Campbell, right? You got to go through the dark cave to get your power so that you can come redeem humanity. This is where he becomes a hero. Although he already kind of was a hero, but this is where he gets the power that allows him to be the redeeming hero.
Exactly.
But he moves from the past to the future in this series, this minute, and it's very well structured.
It's a great minute. Just the context of all that is great. I want to jump back real quick and just chat a little bit more at the front, specifically in the antique store. As you already mentioned, we do meet our antique store owner. She's played by Amanda Walker. Amanda Walker is Scottish, and actually, every time I hear her speak, I'm like, I know I can hear an accent in there. I know I can hear it. There's something subtle in there, and that's because she is Scottish. I'm not going to try doing the IMDb game with you two because, I'm not sure how familiar you are with Amanda Walker and her career, but she's, been in, she has 90 TV credits, not as many movie credits, only 18, but still a good number. And the 4 projects that IMDb says she's known for are 28 weeks later.
Wait, you got to let me try at least, because I think I have her. She's in one of my favorite movies, which is A Room with a View. Okay. Is that one of the top 4?
That is one of the top 4, yes.
All right.
She plays the cocky Signora in A Room with a View. The Cockney. Signora. Not cocky.
Signora.
But she was Sally in 28 Weeks Later, which makes me want to rewatch that one. She's Veronica in Cloud Atlas. I think she's one of the people in the old folks' home when they stage the escape. And she's the country club tennis lady in Wimbledon. So definitely somebody who's kept busy. I didn't see that one. Yeah, I didn't see Wimbledon. But certainly somebody who has kept herself busy over the years. Now, I want to, you had mentioned, Matthew, in the comics that she was an agent, and she pulls off her face, and she's, as it says in the comics, quote, an astoundingly beautiful woman. She is Agent X-13 in the comics. That's what she is named as, one of their most trusted agents. And it's a fun little bit. I like that they kind of pull that, and I like that. Yeah, it would have been awkward if we had a Mission Impossible moment with her pulling her face off to reveal somebody else. But I do like that at least they gave her to us.
Okay, the fanboy in me, this just came to me, and I have no idea if this matters or if anybody thought about this. All right, Peggy Carter is not really created until the 1970s, right?
Yeah.
So this is X-13. Later, Captain America will have a female agent named Betty Ross that he hangs out with. But Captain America will, in a Tales of Suspense story in the late 60s, fall in love with Agent 13, not X-13, but Agent 13, who bears a striking resemblance to the woman he loved in World War II.
Huh.
Turns out that Agent 13 is Sharon Carter, who, of course, is the niece of Peggy Carter, who will emerge, and I think in Captain America and the Falcon 163 in like 1974 or so, 73 or so. Does the X-13, Agent 13, is it all tied together? Did they put all that together and think about it that sophisticatedly? No. But, wouldn't it be nice?
Yeah, but you know what? I am sure that in the background, they are playing around with that in some capacity. They're like, it's probably, the world of comics, it's like the group of people at the time putting all this stuff together. And so, 20 years later, that group is putting these things together. And then 20 years after that, that group is saying, well, what can we pull? And so I like how there's kind of this constant thread of these things being connected, even if it always feels a little messy to me. But it is kind of fun. I love that. We just talking about their code that they have here. I just have to read this because it's actually scripted even longer, which makes me love it all the more, even though I can totally understand why they said, do we really need them to keep going? They already we already get the joke that, the whole wonderful weather this morning, isn't it? Yes, but I always carry an umbrella. That whole gag. Here's the way that the script goes. Then the antique store owner says, I suppose you can't be too careful. Agent Carter, best to be prepared for a shift in the wind. And then the antique store owner, looking for anything in particular? Agent Carter, a dozen eggs and your finest selection of cheese. Antique store owner, I'm afraid you'd better try the nearest farm. Peggy Carter, I buy my milk at the store. Wow, that was like
the Nazis have already won the war.
Yes, the Nazis just won.
Like, can you imagine trying to remember all that? It's like, oh wait, is this where we talk about the cheese? Or
it's so natural, so natural.
Oh, that made me laugh when I was reading that. I'm like, God, this would have been, it would have been the spoof version of this, right? That's the sort of thing you would have had in like a Will Ferrell.
Smart.
Yeah, right, exactly. And Get Smart. Where
it would have been a Get Smart bit.
It would have just kept going
that's
on.
A riot.
So funny. And before we go downstairs or into the secret hallway, we do also get a reveal. And I like that we're kind of getting this sense. This seems like a nice little antique shop, but they're all of a sudden speaking in code. And we also reveal a secret button and a machine gun.
Yes.
Pete, did you want to talk about this gun?
Well, I feel like, it allows us to talk about our very favorite website, the Internet Movie Firearms Database, which does tell us that this gun underneath the that's mounted underneath the desk is the M1921 Thompson machine gun.
Tommy gun.
It was. Yeah, it's a Tommy gun. This was the gangster gun during the Prohibition. The gun that made the 20s roar. Apparently, this is a media myth. The gun was far too expensive for an average thug. It was $200 with a single 20-round magazine, equivalent to about $2,800 in today's dollars. It says it's heavy and hard to conceal, but I don't know. Our secret agent old lady has concealed it just fine.
Well, maybe under your coat, it's a little harder.
Yeah, right, exactly. You need much more of a harness or a truss. John Dillinger, George Machine Gun Kelly, Al Capone, all famed lovers of the Tommy gun. It was originally only intended for military and police use and only was marketed as the gun that safeguards the innocent and providing a level of firepower that would send cowardly criminals running for cover. Considering that a fully automatic weapon with a good amount of recoil isn't exactly the safest way to ensure no innocent bystanders are hurt, it didn't take off in this role and hit the civilian market. Whew. That's the Tommy gun, M1921 Thompson submachine gun, and we get to see a little bit of that coming soon.
Well, and I'd like to say it's not a mantelpiece. But do you think we'll be talking about this at another point?
There is a gun, yeah. Chekhov's gun under the counter.
Yeah.
Is that what they call that?
Oh, we have mysterious people standing outside. There's a gun under the counter. Yeah, I feel like things are afoot. Here. But yes, now we go through this secret door into this hallway, and I feel like there was this period, and I don't know when it started or ended, but medical, like the world of medical and science and stuff, had kind of this greenish look to it. Do you both know what I'm talking about? Kind of like everything is kind of like that kind of sick green feel, which seems so weird for medical, but
yeah, no, I still get that feeling when I go into a hospital. Like, even though they've changed, I still get a little bit sickly green.
It still is a thing. It's such a weird color choice, but I like that they took that and really went with it here. Now, my question for both of you is, how much of this block do you feel like the SSR actually bought to build all of this? Because, I mean, I know we're going to be going downstairs, and so a lot of it can be kind of sub-level as far as what they're building here. But when they opened the secret bookcase in the back of the antique shop, it reveals a hallway. I mean, it's not incredibly long, but it goes a little ways, and there are some double doors at the end. So, I mean, I feel like they must have a big chunk of the block. Did either of you two have give any thought to this, or is this just me?
I don't think it's just you. I think it's actually really interesting because it goes to the dynamics, or I think the dynamic of secret government infrastructure, right? That this thing is hiding in plain sight, right? That it's everybody kind of goes along with it, that we have accepted that there is this secret thing that exists. We don't know anything about it, and it is massive underneath. Like, this is the iceberg, right? We're looking at the iceberg, and we literally get to go the iceberg antique shop. We get to go underneath and see just a start of the infrastructure that we hath wrought.
I think part of this also is sort of the post-60s comic books looking back, right? You may remember that in the old Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. comic book, right, they would get into a barber chair in Manhattan, and they would end up going down a barber pole or a pole kind of thing, a bat pole,
yeah,
and end up in this huge underground complex under Manhattan that was the headquarters of S.H.I.E.L.D., right? Sprawling, right? And so here, but the comic books never gave us the sense that this complex was so huge in Brooklyn, but we get that huge complex here. And it is this idea that underneath the surface, right, there's this whole other world going on out there, taking care of things for us. That's the government that's beneath us, right? And so, I think they've got the whole block. I think they got all of Brooklyn, for God's sake, right?
Yeah,
it's all there.
Well, and so we'll talk about this also in the next minute, because there's a line in the next minute kind of specifically talking about why we're here. But at this point, do either of you question as you're watching the movie, why aren't they just like in an army base? Like, why did we go from Camp Lehigh? Like, why weren't they just doing it there? Why are we in Brooklyn now to do this thing? Did that cross either of your heads, or did the whole idea of it being a secret base in an antique shop like make sense?
Yeah, I think we needed a set change. I think we needed the ride. I think there is something to this idea that we have everything public is the audition. And once they decide on the guy, I get this sense that the lab had already been working on something in secret. And then they realized, oh, we got to put it in a person. Let's build the infrastructure. We're already underground. Let's bring the guy to us rather than us going to the guy. I feel like it was authentically hidden, right? I bought it. It never took me out of the movie.
I agree. It doesn't take me out of the movie, and I think it actually enhances this sort of message of the film, right? If they were under the army base, right, it wouldn't be a democratic action. It would be a military action. So it's got to be under people. It's got to be under civilization somewhere. And going from the antique shop to the lab gives us that movement from past to future. It cements the whole thing together. It works in terms of the message of the film. Does it make sense realistically? Shouldn't it be, right? Because we already know they got a big thing under Camp Lehigh. We find that out in The Winter Soldier, right?
Right.
But, why didn't they do it there? That's where he was before.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
But no, it's got to be somewhere that's civilian. It's got to be within the civilian world in order to make it work.
There's also, just even within the narrative of this film, there's also the desire to maintain the distance between the colonel and what's going on at Lehigh and the secret, research, so that we can maintain their distance later when it counts on the battlefield, right? Like, we have to, if he'd adopted everything into Camp Lehigh, it would be his to own, and it's not his to own, right?
Yeah, it's a partnership.
We've learned that already. It's a partnership, and he doesn't like the direction. So
it also maintains the balance with the Red Skull, right? The Red Skull and Hydra versus the SRA and the military, right? So the SRA is separate from the military. It's separate from the war effort. It's a private section of the war effort. Like Hydra is a private section of the Wehrmacht, right? So it maintains the balance that way as well.
That's actually an interesting thing to bring up also. I hadn't really thought about it before, but so far, every time we're seeing Hydra's secret bases, they're always incredibly isolated, alone, cold, barren, like middle of nowhere. And when we do come finally at this point to SSR's secret base, it is, as you've already said, it's in the middle of the city. It's where the people are. It is like really kind of like the heart of our civilization, or in the New York area.
At least the way Brooklynites would view it. Yes.
Exactly, right. That's the heart of America. But I mean, to that end, it's really like it does already feel so much more connected to humanity as opposed to what we have set up with Hydra.
Yeah.
So, it's good. I really like it. We're at this point, we get to the end of this minute. Steve and Peggy walk in. Fantastic reveal. Like the way you already talked about this, Matthew, but just the way that we get the reveals of them walking through the long hallway. The doors are opened by these MPs, and they step out on this catwalk and look over at the Rebirth Lab. And we have all of this machinery, people milling about everywhere, very few of them credited, so I can't really talk about many of them. And then everybody stops and stares as Steve looks at them. And that's kind of the end of the minute. It's great. It's a fantastic setup for what is to come.
Yeah, and we get Steve's reaction shot. I mean, that camera set so that what we watch is the door open and Steve and Peggy walk through, and Steve walks into the shot.
Yeah.
And then we get his face. And then we do the reverse shot of everyone looking up at him. But it's really his face that sort of, whoa, what the hell is all this? Heck is all this?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I love that shot too, because it's a crane shot, right? The crane is coming up from the floor below, and we get to meet them on that angle. It's like the future is coming up to meet him, and that sort of visual metaphor for his experience works really well for me.
How do you feel that the CG work to kind of create this puny Steve works, Matthew?
I think it works well. It's and strangely enough, it seems to hold up, which suggests it works even better. I mean, if you watch like Forrest Gump today, and all that stuff with the voices that they did, it doesn't work. It looks fake, right?
You mean the talking to the presidents and stuff?
Right, that sort of thing. Here, right, it still works. I mean, maybe we're just not far enough away from it. We haven't developed more, but the body double, the connection of the head to the body double, it's almost seamless. It works very well. There are only a couple of moments when it seems a little cheesy, but they're rare and they're passing. And I was very impressed with this still. And watching it again, I was still impressed with it.
At just how little you think about it, right?
Yeah.
For me, I constantly marvel at, oh, right, that's not a real whole guy.
Yeah.
It looks like a real whole guy.
Yeah, there are moments here and there. Like there were some in the car right before this where it's there's always just like a little bit like I stopped buying it for a second, but then as soon as they cut back, suddenly it's working again. And so I'd say 95% of the time I'm right there with it. It's great.
The worst part for me was the fight in the alley, right? Where he's, there was just something a little off on that one, but most of the rest of it worked fine for me.
You think that's because it's so early in the film? Like we've only just met him, and at that point, I'm still thinking pretty hard about the fact that they've done something wondrous with light and pixels to make that happen.
Yeah, that may be.
It might be so early. I'm a little judgy.
Yeah, maybe that could be it.
Yeah,
it is possible. Well, I don't think I have anything else for this minute. Do either of you have any last things? Should we wrap up for the day and we can come back tomorrow?
Let's wrap it up.
Sounds
Let's get
good.
into it.
All right.
Get some injections going.
Matthew, remind everyone again where they can read some of your works and find more out about what you're working on.
My book from 2009, Secret Identity Crisis, The Unmasking of Cold War America. Comic books, The Unmasking of Cold War America is available from Amazon. I've got a recent article out on Werewolf by Night, of all things, in a book called Gothic Mashups. If you've never read Werewolf by Night from the 1970s, Mike Plug art, gorgeous book, loved it. Right, Man by Day, Werewolf by Night. So that's some recent stuff. I got an article out recently in the Journal of American Culture on Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid.
Oh,
Van Peppenpaugh's film. So
outstanding.
You can probably find those at your favorite database somewhere.
You certainly are covering the gamut. You've got the Marvel, the superheroes, you've got the horror comics, you've got the westerns, all over the place. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I was an administrator for several years and got nothing published, and then I stopped being an administrator, and I had all this stuff pent up, and suddenly, poof, all kinds of stuff came out of me.
It's good. You got to flush it out every few years.
Just get rid of it.
You don't want it to build up.
Well, everybody check out Matthew's works. Lots of great stuff to dig into. And we'll be back tomorrow for Minute 33. Until next time, true believers.
I buy my milk at the store.
I need some cheese.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM. Engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is Spread the News by Anthony Vega, and this season's show art is by Winston Yabo. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, consider doing that for this show.